Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss. Dragon of the Southern Tier, I'm happy to be here with you today. It is August 5th, a Friday, and of course, economic data has come out just in time for the weekend so that you can forget about it. But there are questions at this time that many people are confused by. We have some individuals that are saying that we are in a recession, which we are part of. We have other individuals like the White House that are saying, no, we're not in a recession. The economy is going well, and you just don't understand. And now we have economic data that just came out for the month of July from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that tells us, well, some confusing information. What does this all mean? Are we in a recession or are we doing great? Let's try and get an answer to that so that you can understand in full context where we stand at this time and where we will be very shortly in the future. Now, before we get started, we do want to mention that if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to hear what you have to say about the issues that matter to you, to hear your opinions and your voices from anywhere in the world. Because even if your government does not agree, even if the internet overlords do not agree, we want to hear what you have to say because you are important. So we hope to see you this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's get back to this core question. The question is America in a recession? Perhaps we should even start before that. Is America having a problem with the economy? And if we are, when did it start? For the average person in America, this is a pretty easy thing to answer. But it's not, especially if you're listening to any of the news media out there, because they have many, many different ways of looking at this. But let's go back to the beginning, well, relatively to the beginning. It was back in February 17th of 2021 when we first identified that the U.S. economy was in trouble, big trouble. As you can see, we had mentioned here that we expected back on February of 2021 that the U.S. economy would crash in the second half of 2021. And it did. We saw that energy prices began to increase. We saw the impact of closing down the XL pipeline, and we started seeing other pressures, including a supply chain shortage that has continued to this day in 2022, more than a year later. In fact, at the beginning of 2022, we started mentioning that the economic situation was getting worse. And we had predictions that not only looked at inflation, but saw inflation increasing beyond normal levels. In fact, we had said that we would see over the summer that initially we expected about a 7.5% to 9% inflation rate. And then in March, we mentioned that we expected to see the inflation rate hit somewhere in the double digits, somewhere between 11 to 15%. We stand by that prediction by the end of August. So the question remains, what's going on with the economy? Is it as bad as some people are saying? Is it better? Is it worse? The thing is, it's hard to define because the definitions and the way that people, many of the economists and news media are looking at the economy is changing. It's becoming fluid. Many things that we understood no longer apply, or at least so we are told. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's go to, this is from Forbes, the Forbes Advisor on July 12th of 2022. They asked the question, what is a recession? Now you should stop right there and say, back in the beginning of July, we were told that the economy had continued to be a strong and productive economy. The fact that the nation was looking at 9.1% inflation, that didn't matter. We were told there is no recession and everything is okay. And so Forbes had to look at and came out with an answer. What is a recession? In part, they mentioned that a recession is declared when a nation's economy experiences negative gross domestic product, GDP, rising levels of unemployment, falling retail sales, and contracting measures of income and manufacturing for an extended period of time. Pretty straightforward. In fact, it's that definition that in 1974, an economist named Julius Shiskin came up with his rule of thumb, a rule that everyone has taken to be essentially the truth and has been reported since 1974 accurately, that 2 consecutive quarters of a declining GDP identifies a recession. Not the start of the recession, but that you are in a recession at that point. It's over 6 months of decreasing values. The National Bureau of Economic Research, also called the NBER, is the authority that actually makes the official declaration and says we are in a recession or we are not in a recession. Fair enough. Their definition of what is a recession is a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real gross domestic product, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Now, I understand. This is math, this is numbers, this is the economy. Most people don't listen. Most people drown this out. Please bear with us as we try to answer this. Just in the same, if you had been listening to us back in February of 2021, you would have been prepared for what we are seeing today. If you were listening to us back in January, February, March of 2022, you would have extra food in your house right now. The cost of food would not be affecting you and your family as strongly. You would have made better investments. We hope that you will stay with us throughout this because it's going to affect you personally. So we understand that back in July, we had a definition that was clear that came from the economists and all of the financial newspapers at the time. But then the White House on July 29th changed everything. The reason why they did so is because on July 28th, as was expected by this channel and certain other institutions, the United States entered into a recession. We had 2 consecutive quarters, 6 months of negative GDP, gross domestic product. Our economy is failing. That is a fact. It is empirically correct. It cannot be questioned. But the White House still decided to come out and question it. In fact, what we saw was that the White House came out, as reported by CNBC on July 29th, the White House goes on the offensive to argue that the U.S. is not in a recession. Now, you may say, well, why does that matter? This matters because the Biden administration is looking at the 2022 midterm elections, and they realize they are in trouble. There's something that's called the misery index. We'll show you that. The misery index is a gauge. It's a way to see how the economy is affecting the very next election, in this case, 2022. And according to Bloomberg News, the midterm misery index for the Biden administration shows that the Democrats could lose 30 seats in Congress. That's between the Senate and the House, which means that the Biden administration and the progressive ideology he has been pushing would stall. They would get nothing through. And that's a big deal. The agenda for all the Democrats would stop all at once. So the more positive that the economy can be viewed as, the less likely that Democrats will have a landslide loss, and they are hoping to at least hold on to the Senate so that they would be able to combat the House and get some of their issues through, even though they would be losing a large portion of their power. So this is about power. You have to be convinced by the major news media and the Biden-Harris administration that the economy is, if not good, that it's not bad, so that you will go out and vote for Democrats so that they can maintain power. Now, how does that affect your pocketbook? How is that affecting the way you pay your bills? Well, not quite as well. You know, this is so bad that even Facebook had to get involved, and Facebook themselves on August 1st decided to redefine what is a recession to match what the White House had already said. And what seems to be collusion, we see that Facebook went to an economist, Philip Magness, came out and said that there was a recession. No matter what the Biden-Harris administration wanted to say, the facts, the numbers said that we were in a recession. And he had to state, we live in an Orwellian hellscape. Facebook is now fact-checking anyone who questions the White House's word games about the definition of a recession. So it's gone so far that Facebook, social media, are fact-checking economists in the way that economists define our economy. This is bad. But we knew this was going to be bad. And we are in a recession. And you need to prepare for a recession that isn't going to have a soft landing, that isn't going to be short term. And we can tell you that because the information has been in front of us for quite some time. We'll give you our proof. According to Europe News, inflation in the Netherlands is above 10% for the first time in nearly 47 years. I'll say that again. The Netherlands is experiencing 10% inflation, a high of 47 years, nearly a half century. This news came out back on April 8th of 2022. This is old news. Europe has already been experiencing major inflation and major recession already. Let me go further because that's just one nation. We heard also in April 26th, according to CNN, Deutsche Bank made an announcement and warned that the United States was going into a recession, a major recession. And they were warning the world, their investors, and everyone else that you needed to prepare for a recession, something that we had already said in January, February, and March of 2022. And they confirmed what our fears were, telling us that there was a downturn that was coming because of the economic policies of the Biden-Harris administration. In fact, that was followed up, again, going back to Bloomberg News. They mentioned, and this was on July 14th, German economy is moving into a recession. So now we see that the Netherlands and the European Union, which it is tied with directly, and Germany, which is also tied to the European Union, we're experiencing high inflation and moving into a recession. We knew this for months, but in the United States, we were told that wasn't possible, that the United States was somehow insulated. But that's just not realistic. In fact, we even heard most recently on August 3rd from the United Kingdom. According to The Guardian, they mentioned that the United Kingdom's inflation will soar to astronomical levels over the next year. Think about that. We're talking about significant double-digit inflation in England, and we see recession in the European Union. There is no way that anyone could honestly look at you, the American people, knowing that the European Union, where we do a large amount of trade, a lot of business, they're having high inflation and going into a recession. Our greatest ally, which would be England, the United Kingdom, they are having high inflation and they are experiencing and preparing for a long, deep recession. There is no way that the United States can avoid this. No matter what you've been told up to this moment, you have to understand the United States is a service economy. Thanks to the Obama administration, we went from being a manufacturing country to a service country. And that means we get our goods from overseas. We get our goods from Europe and from China. And therefore, what affects Europe affects the United States, as well as with China. And China right now is slowing down the production of goods. But Europe is doing the same thing. China's blaming it on the pandemic. Europe is blaming it on the fact that they are in a recession because energy prices have continued to go up higher and higher. Looking at the BBC News on today, August 5th, they have come out and they mentioned that the Bank of England is warning that the United Kingdom will fall into a recession this year, that they are going into a recession as we speak, and that they are expecting to have inflation at 13%. 13%. Now, as much as Americans would love to be isolated and insulated from the problems around the world, that's just not a reality. And when we see inflation going up to 10, 13, and higher, well, that's going to affect America. And we're already at 9.1. In fact, we're probably getting higher than that. Now, you may say, well, it doesn't matter what the definition is. You want to believe the definition that is being told to you by American news media and reject that from Europe and the rest of the world. You want to give up the history that we have had and say, well, the Biden-Harris administration would not lie. I wish that were the case. One of the biggest factors that is increasing the inflation in the United States has been the wanton spending by the Biden-Harris administration. That's just a fact. We have too much money that we are printing. And the answer from the Biden-Harris administration, with the help of Joe Manchin, is that they're going to print more money. In fact, they've said that they're looking to spend at least $300 billion to reduce the deficit. But the problem, in part, is you can't reduce a deficit by increasing the amount of money you're spending, because that's what got us into the recession in part. That and higher energy prices. And this is something that's devastating everyone. If we go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics themselves and looking at their report on inflation, which shows 9.1% currently, some of the biggest factors affecting inflation are energy and food. And what do we know about energy and food? And all links will be included in the description of this video. But as you can see, we have food as increasing by 10.4%. In fact, eating food in your home, not going out to restaurants, the cost of food is up 12.2%. And that's not accurate. You've been to the store, you've bought milk, you've bought eggs, you're buying meat. You've seen them all increase by 17 to 35% depending on where you live in the United States and exactly what item of food you're getting. We know there's a baby food formula shortage that has been ravaging this nation for quite some time. We know that 15% of the shelves in the stores that we go to are empty at this time. That is the fact. That has been the history for the last 6 months. That's the reality we are all living through. And if it were only the food, well, that would be one thing. But the fact is, we know that because of the Ukraine-Russia war, there is a shortage of fertilizer in the world. We know that crops this year will be 40% less worldwide. We already know that there are food riots that have toppled the government of Sri Lanka already. We know that people are having food riots and threatening to topple the government of Panama as we speak. We know that Eritrea are having food riots. In fact, we know that there are riots throughout Africa right now for food and starting to get there in South America. So we know that not only has the cost of food gone up, but there will be less food coming very soon, which means that price will increase even more. At the same time, energy costs are up. And you can go buy gasoline, as we've all been to the gas station. You've seen how high it has been. It has been over $5.50, $6, some places $7 a gallon, and remains around the $5 to $6 range, depending on where you live in the United States right now. That is double what it was a year and a half ago. And that's just gasoline. That's not including the energy you need to create electricity. And electricity has gone up for everyone. Even looking at the utilities, we see that that's up 13%. Electricity, as you can see here, is up 13%. We know that gasoline is up 59%. Fuel oil is up 98%. These numbers do not turn around in a month. Yes, maybe next month they might be a little bit better. I don't think they will. But that doesn't mean that we're not in a problem. This problem took 18 months to get into, and it is going to take more than just a month and $300 billion in extra spending to get out of. That is a fact. But you're going to say to me, Mike, that may be true, but the unemployment rate is 3.5%. And that's the only headline that you go by. In fact, that's the only headline that the major news media want to tell you about. The economy is doing great. 3.5% unemployment. That's exactly what we heard all last month, all of July. We heard the Biden-Harris administration say, well, it's 3.6 unemployment. The economy is doing well. Everything is okay. Now they're coming out and saying it's 3.5% unemployment. The economy is doing fantastic. You just don't understand. You're too dumb to understand that the economy is doing well. Even though you're spending more money on your bills, it costs more money to buy food. It costs more money to get gasoline to go to and from work, to get your kids to school or daycare. It costs more. They're telling you that it's okay because 3.5% unemployment. Well, what does that really mean? See, what has happened is the population in the United States has grown. It continues to increase. We have babies, and we are having those babies grow into young adults and into adults. Our economy, our population is increasing. In fact, back in July 2021, we had 161 million people who were working. Today, July 2022, there are 163 million, almost 164 million Americans who are part of our labor force. They're out there having jobs. So we have more people who are involved. Now, there's another factor that's very important here, because it is the difference in the number of people who are not in the labor force that is actually making the unemployment rate look good. Because people aren't being counted anymore. It's not that they suddenly got jobs and they started working. They didn't. They're just not counted as not working anymore. And that's why we see that the unemployment rate went down to 3.5%. Let me show it to you in a different way, not using numbers. Let's look at the charts. Should make it very simple for you. So this comes from the St. Louis Fed. This comes from the Treasury itself. And so you can look at this chart for yourself. We all understand, and we have been told over and over again, the engine of growth in the United States, in any country, is small business. The more small businesses you have, the more those small businesses grow, the better your economy will be. That is always the truth. And that is why from 2017 to 2019, we saw the United States economy increase and we saw the unemployment rate decrease, even as we had more people. We had more participation, more people involved actually working. That's no longer the case. Part of the reason is because, as you can see from the chart, this is going from January of 2022 to today, July. And you can see that the number of small businesses has decreased. The engine of growth of 70% of the jobs in the United States has gone down. There are fewer small businesses and fewer people employed at those small businesses. That means we're not in a strong economy. We have a problem. Let's look at this. This is the labor force participation rate. How many people are actually working as a percentage of the population? Well, as you can see, back when we had a good economy, this is going back to 2017, we saw that it was increasing, that we have more people, along with more small businesses, more people were working at those small businesses and other businesses. And that was fueling a very positive economy for the United States. And then we had the pandemic. Now, we have recovered a great deal since that time. But as you can see, that going from January of 2021, it did increase under the Biden-Harris administration up until March, when we made our announcement that the United States was going to experience double-digit inflation. Because all of the factors said we were in trouble. And from that moment on, fewer people were working and fewer people are involved in our economy. The number of people not in the labor force increased. Let me give you another chart here. Again, this is the number of people who are not in our labor force. They are not working. They're not considered unemployed. This isn't the number of people who are unemployed. These are the people who don't count as unemployed. They just don't work. And what you can see is that going back in 2017, from January of 2017 to approximately January of 2020, that number was relatively stable at about 95 million. Once we got past January, well, the pandemic hit. And we had over 100 million people who were not working. They weren't unemployed, they just couldn't work. Since that time, that number has gone down, but as you can see, even in June of 2020, when people were returning back to work, we have never gotten back to the levels we were at before. More people are not working now than at any time previously, going back to 2017. And in fact, pretty much ever. And we have seen that this number, while it was decreasing up until March, when we told you the economy was going to go into a recession, then it started increasing. People stopped getting jobs, stopped participating, and were not being counted as unemployed. They just didn't count at all. And that number has increased, as you can see on the chart, from the Treasury itself. So let me try and make this simple. The data that we have, both in the United States and around the world, tells us one thing. The world is going into a recession, and it's considered to be a deep recession that will hurt millions, billions of people around the globe. We know that there is a food shortage that is coming, and there is no plan from the United States government, and as far as we can tell, any government in the world. You have to prepare yourself for that. Inflation is going higher, and the Biden-Harris administration is planning to spend trillions more than they have already been spending, well above the average that we spend per year, which is increasing the amount of inflation on top of the fact that energy costs are increasing and there is less food. That means higher inflation, double-digit inflation. We're talking about 15% inflation at least, much like the United Kingdom, where they have already stated they're looking at a target of 13%. We believe they're underestimating the problem because the politicians, both in the United Kingdom and here in the United States, need to be reelected. They need to look good. They need you to feel secure at least until they get past that next election. Then they'll worry about the repercussions after that. That's why No one else in the news media is telling you what I have told you, what I have shown you, that across the world, we are in a recession. In the United States, we are in a recession. And inflation is rising and will continue to rise at a rate not seen since the 1970s under President Jimmy Carter. This is called stagflation. That's what we are experiencing right now. That's why the unemployment rate is at 3.5%, but yet so many people are out of work, unable to work, and the cost of everything is increasing. Try to make it as simple as I can in the most simple terms that I can without using a lot of math and without using a lot of charts. Now, why does that matter? Well, besides the fact that you have to prepare. You have to prepare for the fact that as we see inflation increase, we are also seeing interest rates increase. That's not going to stop anytime soon, which means every loan that you have, whether it's for your car or for your mortgage or anything else, your credit cards are all going to cost more. You have to budget for that. You have to start doing that now. You have to understand that the food that you need to feed yourself and your family is going to cost more. Not only is gasoline going to continue to be at elevated prices, but we're going into the winter. Fuel to keep your homes warm is going to increase as well. You have to be prepared for that. Food, there will be a shortage of food. And no, the United States will not starve like Sri Lanka or Panama or a third of Africa. No, we're not going to starve like that. But it does mean that we will see more and more food items not in our stores. We're going to see more events like the baby food formula shortage. There's going to be a lot of shortages. So that means you need to go out and buy 10% more food every time that you go shopping. And you need to buy things like rice and potatoes and grains that will last long term so that you can be able to make it through not just the winter. You have to make it a year until the next year's crops are going to be available. This is a long-term problem, not a short-term. You have over a year that you have to prepare for. And no one else is telling you that. We want you to be aware. It's going to cost you more. You're going to have less money. Your bills are going to be higher. There's going to be less food. That's what a recession, in fact, this may even be a depression that we are going through. And it is unlike anything that anyone has been alive to see. I am 54 years old. I went through the stagflation of the Carter administration. This is unique and different, and you need to be prepared. We're trying to help you. And you know it's a subject that no one wants to pay attention to. You want to see what the newest movie trailer is. You want to go out to the movies. You want to go out with your friends and have fun, drinks. You want to relax with your family. I understand. But you have to be prepared. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help you be prepared. Not to panic, but to be set up so that you will be able to take care of your family going forward. You cannot rely on politicians who are looking to win an election to tell you the honest truth in a timely manner so that you will be prepared. You cannot wait for them to come up with a plan that will only benefit their political objectives. You need to make one for yourself. Now, you may say, Mike, I've seen the data from here in the United States and around the world. I understand the things that you're saying, but I think you're wrong. Fantastic. Tell me why. I want to be wrong. I hope we will be wrong. I hope to be proven absolutely incorrect because it will be good for everyone in America and around the world. But that isn't realistic. If you think it is, please show me the evidence that you have. Please tell me what you see that is going to change what we are predicting. Because we want to be wrong. But we do hope, no matter what, that you take an opportunity this Sunday to join us in our live stream at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from anywhere in the world to talk about what you're doing to prepare for the inflation, for the recession, and the potential depression that the world will be going through all the way through 2023. I know you've heard it before. What difference does it? You make the difference. When you watch, chat, tweets, your likes and shares, and your subscription, you make the difference. From across the world, you help us to keep the lights on and the stream alive. You are making the difference to fight the woke and the crazy legislation that we see before. We at No Soundbites Allowed, and I want to thank you for everything that you do in helping us reach our goal, and your likes, your tweets, your comments, and your subscriptions to the channel. We want to thank you from the bottom of our heart. And this is a special thank you to those who have donated to the channel and helped us in all of our efforts. We will strive to make this channel the best that we possibly can, because you deserve no less. Thank you.